And welcome back in, everyone. This is episode 147 of Catfish on Ice with your host, Chad Minton, brought to you by DraftKings and also Raycon, promo code THPN for DraftKings and promo code THPN15 for Raycon wireless earbuds. We have a really outstanding guest joining us for episode 147 now. That is Aaron Sims, radio announcer for the Milwaukee Admirals. How are you doing this afternoon, Aaron?
You were really selling it, boy. That's great. I appreciate that. It's good to be with you. It's great. I mean, exhibition games going on, and it's an exciting time of year, man. I mean, we've got there's an NHL exhibition game. They're going to play in Milwaukee on the weekend, and yeah, we're ready to go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I can tell you, there's a lot of reasons to be super excited about the Milwaukee Admirals because of the Predators prospect pool just keeps getting better and better. It's loaded with so much exciting talent, whether you're talking about goaltender, whether you're talking about defense, offense. But first off, Aaron, wanted to ask you kind of how did you get into covering the Admirals? Like, what was your journey to that role? And maybe some of your best memories, some of the biggest Preds players that you remember meeting and covering throughout your path.
I've been very lucky. This is my 18th season here, 18th year, 17th season since the Admirals took 2 years ago off because of COVID. So I started in 2005. I got the job in a horrible way. I was doing play-by-play for the Badger University of Wisconsin men's hockey team on public television. They used to rebroadcast the games at 10:30 at night. I was doing that for a couple of seasons. I did a year of basketball, women's basketball at the University of Wisconsin, and hosted talk shows. That's a long way to get to this point. I knew somebody at a radio station, and they called, and unfortunately, the guy who had been doing this job, Kyle Schultz, passed away unexpectedly after 4 games into the 05-06 season. So they called me to fill in for the weekend, and I'm still here. So
wow.
I hate how I got my job, but I'm thrilled that I got it. And so it's a sad story to start, but it's been it's been great since then. And obviously, we think about Kyle a lot. But anyway, when I got here, man, that first year, rookies were Pekka Rinne, Shea Weber, Kevin Klein was on defense. They had up front, Darren Haydar's an AHL Hall of Famer, but Rich Peverly had just signed with the team that year after I joined. Scotty Upshall and Jordan Tutu were here. Sheldon Brookbank the following year was the Eddie Shore winner in the American League for the best defenseman. So I've had serious, this is not a lie, pretty much anybody of consequence with the Nashville Predators since 2005. I know them.
Really cool.
I've been really lucky. We've had some great guys, great players come through, and it's been a blast to see these guys. You know, I mean, I think a lot about guys like Nick Spaulding. I think a lot about guys like Ryan Ellis, Roman Josi. It's really been cool to be here.
And the perspective from your angle, watching players like Roman Josi now, and like, for instance, what Josi did as a defenseman, putting up nearly 100 points, truly historical stuff. And you can go back and have memories of covering him when he was just a prospect. Is just got to be a really cool way to look at it from your angle.
I remember Marty Jelena was the director of player development, and it was a new position at the time. And Marty had played with Roman in Sweden as Marty's career was winding down. And we were in Abbotsford, British Columbia, and Roman was injured to start the season. And I was talking with Martin Jelena about him, and Marty says, "You have no idea how good this guy is. Like, he should not have been a second round pick. Like, he was like, this guy is so special and so talented and all of this stuff." And we hadn't seen him, right? He was injured. And then we see as the season wears on, and then obviously what he's done ever since with the Norris and what he did last year. And it's pretty cool to get ground floor on these guys who have gone on to be very, not only special players, but for the most part, special humans too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're being joined by Aaron Sims, radio announcer for the Milwaukee Admirals. Let's talk more about last season now. Maybe you can recap our listeners on how the Admirals looked last season. Was it a season that where they performed up to expectations? Is there room for growth? Kind of recap what the Admirals did last season.
Some of all of what you said. It started off slowly. Again, the Admirals took the 2021 year off because of COVID. So the start of the 21-22 season, it got a little slow because the culture wasn't really identified and the players were still kind of feeling each other out and all of that. But right around Christmas time, it started to take off. And it really, really turned into a special season. I mean, players like Cody Glass, Connor Ingram, Devin Cooley had to step up in goal and was remarkable. A lot. Mark Delgado for probably the first 60 games was the best defenseman in Milwaukee. It was just. There were so many guys that stepped up and did some good things. Cole Schneider is on an AHL deal, obviously, but he's the captain. He had a career year last year. He scored 30 goals. Igor Afanasyev had his moments. There were a lot of guys who did, and it was really neat to see how it progressed, what it turned into, and for the first time since 2011, the team won a playoff series. They beat a really, really good Manitoba Moose team. And it's not like teams have been bad over the years. I mean, they've won a couple of division championships over the years, but just couldn't get out of the playoffs.
And the COVID,
playoffs.
Unfortunately, that the COVID shortened season, they were the top team in the league, if I remember correctly, weren't they in the standings
40,
at least?
41, 14-8. Yeah.
So who knows what they would have accomplished that year if the season had, completed.
And that year, you look at the roster on that team. Those guys all played integral roles in Nashville last year. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Tanner Jeannot, but Eli Tolvanen, and I mean, it's Alex Carrier. There were a lot of guys who were here that, when Nashville got banged up, and then Brad Richardson got hurt. So now you couldn't put Brad Richardson in, it seems like they tried to stall it as much as they could by signing those guys, the Cousins and the Richardsons, and trying to back it up a little, Benning and Borvietsky and some of them, obviously they're great players, don't get me wrong, but they tried to hold off the young players as long as they could. And finally they just ran out of room. They had to start signing guys because everybody got hurt. And now here's Tanner Jeannot. And oh, by the way, Tanner Jeannot can play this game a little bit. Tanner Jeannot's got a motor that doesn't stop, So it was really, that 1920 season was really special. And then it started to kind of feel that way toward the end of last year, but they ran into the juggernaut that was the Chicago Wolves. And, Chicago lost one game in regulation in the playoffs last year, and that was to Milwaukee in the second round. So, I mean, that
team's loaded. That team's got so many good prospects.
Fantastic team, Carolina's team. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, Aaron, that talking about that 2019-20 season and beyond, Preds fans down here were clamoring, unleash the youth. Like, we want to see these younger players. We don't want to keep re-signing veterans who might be a little past their peak. No offense to those players, because like you said, they're great players in their own right. But the fans were wanting to see the younger players. They were wanting to see some call-ups out of Milwaukee. They were seeing Milwaukee do so many special things. But I guess that's going to take me.
I get that. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I get that. I totally get that. And I get frustrated too for so many of these guys. Like, why aren't you giving this guy a chance? This guy just needs a chance, and in the old days, they would have gotten 2 shifts in a game and that would have been it. Right.
Yeah.
So like, just give these guys a chance. But I go back. This is one of the great quotes of all time. Ron Hextall said it. Nobody's gotten worse playing in the American Hockey League. It's not like players over ripen. So that they were able to get a little bit more, and Tanner Jeannot was able to flex his muscle and show how dominant he was with the Chicago Wolves in 2021 for the handful of games he was. Tanner Jeannot was by far the best player in the American Hockey League. I don't that year. I don't think it's close. With all due respect to some of these other players, he was the full package. So it got him to finally he smacked him in the mouth and said, "I'm going to play." you have no choice. You have to put me in the lineup, and he's been good ever since. I apologize for interrupting, but
no, you're fine. No, you're good. I love that. It's just great stuff there, especially the Tanner Jeannot stuff, because he kind of burst onto the scene out of nowhere. He wasn't like one of those prospects that people were talking about for 2 or 3 years on the Nashville level and thinking we got to get this guy in, kind of like what we're thinking about with like Igor Afanasiev, for instance, where we've just been waiting for him. Tanner Jeannot kind of burst onto the scene out of nowhere, and now he's just such a key part of the Preds team now. All right, let's
talk. You can't
think
of life without him. Yeah.
No, I can't. No, I really can't. All right, so now let's get into more the future in this current season, what we're going into. This is going to be really enlightening for me, your perspective on this. What do you see from this team coming up next season, or maybe some newcomers we haven't heard of that are going to play big roles on this 22-23 Admirals team, maybe some players that you're expecting to be a leadership role, heavy leadership role this year. And then, of course, we've got Yaroslav Askarov, which is probably the headliner. I'm sure Admirals fans cannot wait to see Yaroslav Askarov, widely regarded the top goalie prospect in the world. So kind of run through what you're expecting from this current team.
Let's start there because it's very interesting. I think we all thought that Connor Ingram had the backup job in Nashville locked up. Mm-hmm. So I'm waiting to see if there's going to be a move there. Kevin Lankinen is a guy who has played some good minutes with a very bad team in Chicago. So to sign him, I got to imagine he's going to be the backup. It's going to be real interesting to see how all of this shakes out because like I mentioned about Tanner Jeannot punching somebody in the nose and saying, pay attention to me. Devin Cooley did that in the playoffs last year for Milwaukee. So now you're talking about a situation where in Milwaukee, you're probably in a spot where it's Ingram, Yaroslav, and Devin Cooley. And let's not forget about Tomas Vomatska, who's going to be in there too. And the Predators and Admirals do not have a full-blown ECHL affiliate this year. So it's going to be interesting to see where Vomatska gets some time, and hopefully he finds a spot to get some time. And if Ingram stays and with us, Askarov, does Devin Cooley find some time somewhere?
I don't know how you find time for all the, like, it's a great problem to have an overabundance of such quality goaltenders. I thought Tomas Vomatska played really well in the showcase, prospect showcase. He made some really good saves. Every time I do get to see Vomatska, he impresses me. Devin Cooley has been rising up the prospect pool for a while now. And as you said, really proved himself in the playoffs last year. We know all about Connor Ingram. And then you've got Askarov. So it's like, you got to think. It's really strange to see how they're going to get everyone playing time.
Yeah. And, part of me is like, okay, there's got to be a move. And then part of me is like, boy, last year the Carolina Hurricanes were at their 7th-string goaltender when they signed Jack LaFontaine out of Minnesota to come play, and now he's not even in the organization. So it's interesting, and David Poyle makes enough money; he can make that decision and figure it out. But obviously, the goaltending is where everybody is going to be looking. But I'm particularly curious about many things. One is Igor Afanasiev going to be the guy that go back to 2011? Nick Spaulding played several games at the end of the 10-11 season with Nashville. And he started 2011-12 in Milwaukee, and we were all shocked. We're like, Spaulding wasn't great at any one thing. He was really, really good at everything. And he was as smart as anybody on the ice. Nick Spaulding and worked as hard as anybody on the ice. Nobody outworked him. And we thought there's no way that Nick Spaulding is going to be here. Well, he came to Milwaukee. So I'm watching him in practice, and everything he did had a purpose. Like, he wasn't just, when he was skating around during drills, he wasn't just shooting the puck in the goalie's left pad. He was scoring no matter what. If he was in the corner working on a drill, he was taking that puck. And 95% of the time, he took that puck in that drill. Played 4 games. We never saw him again. Nashville had to sort out some money issues or some roster, whatever it was. Nashville had to sort it out. They figured it out. Igor's kind of that guy for me this year. From what I'm hearing, and everything I hear is secondhand. I got to trust somebody down in Nashville. But everything I'm hearing with Igor Afanasyev is that he's been really good. He was brilliant in the rookie stuff. So I'm curious to see. He had the great camp. Was it last year, right? That he was one of the last cuts, if not the last cut at the outset of camp. So that's where I'm wondering there. Like, okay, does he come down 5-6 games, maybe the first month, and then we don't see him again?
That's very possible.
I want to see the consistency from him night in and night out. It's a big jump, man. And he only played a handful of games. Yes, he was a pro in Russia, but he only played a handful of games. Now he's got his second full year in North America coming up this coming season. What kind of a jump is that going to be? That's the difficult jump. Rookie to first year, okay, you're getting your feet wet. Nobody's really expecting you to light the world on fire, okay? Especially if you're not Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews, whatever. But that first year to second year, man, you better be ready, because now you know what to expect. What are you going to do? And so Igor Afanasyev is a guy that I look to there. These off-season signings that Nashville made surprised me a little bit, because last year we had so many guys at the end of the year in Milwaukee: Evangelista, Wilsby, Kondolik, all these guys. And I'm going over so many because Parsonen, because there were so many here. I didn't think that Nashville would sign very much depth for this organization, for the Admirals. But then Mark Jankowski's there, Kiefer Sherwood's there, Jordan Gross is there, Kevin Gravel, Roland McEwen. So now there's a great base of veterans that will be in Milwaukee, we think. I mean, Jankowski's, from what I understand, is having a good camp. Kiefer Sherwood was phenomenal last year in Colorado in the American League. Jordan Gross was the Eddie Shore winner, is the best defenseman. So these guys can play. But now you're going to have Jordan Gross paired up with Adam Wilsby in Milwaukee, perhaps. So now Wilsby's got a solid guy, and Wilsby is such a beautiful skater. And he only played a couple of games.
Good things. I've heard a lot of good things.
But man, was he impressive when he was out there. I mean, the situation wasn't too big for him. Luke Prokop, I haven't seen him play. But he's penciled in right now as he's going to play. Back to Afanasyev. Let's talk Mark Delgado. I mentioned him before. I really think last year, for the first 75-80% of the season, he was the best defenseman in Milwaukee. Now, can he do that 100% of the season? And will he be a guy who, when they have a need, they'll call him up?
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
He's an impressive player, a real impressive player. Don't let his size fool you. Don't let stats fool you. The kid can play. He's got some nasty in him. He's a lot of fun to watch. So those guys, I'm really excited. Is Tommy Novak going to be in Milwaukee?
That was the player I was going to ask you about, because I would love to see Novak start the year on the Preds lineup. He played very well in 20+ games on the NHL level last year, and then I think he had to hit the COVID protocol list, and he just never made it back to the Preds lineup. But I think he's more than capable, and I'm sure you've seen plenty of him covering the Admirals to know what type of player he is. I love the two-way game of Tommy Novak, and I just think I think he's got a really high ceiling, and I think he'd be a great fourth-line player for the Predators this year.
I think Tommy Novak in Milwaukee is one of the 5 or 6 smartest players I've seen on this roster in my 18 years.
Oh, wow.
He thinks the game. He sees the game so beautifully. He can slow it down. He's like a wonderful point guard, a John Stockton type, like, especially on a power play, the guy can make things happen. So yeah, I'm curious, like Tommy Novak doesn't have the afterburners like some of these guys, they pick a guy who can skate faster than anybody. That Tommy Novak's not that guy, but he's going to never get you in trouble. You mentioned ceiling. His floor is a lot higher than a lot of other people, I think, because of his head, because of his brain, the way he thinks the game. I'll be curious to see. Another guy that I'm really curious about is Cole Smith, because Cole Smith had a brilliant year here last season, signed his restricted deal to go back. I'm going to be curious to see if anybody picks him up, if he has to clear waivers, if anybody picks him up, because there too, he's a big body. That guy can fly. and he put in 20 last year here in the American. I mean, he can be a special player too. I don't know that he's as tough as Tanner Janot, but he can do some things out there. And
Interesting.
You mentioned the depth in this organization. They have found some guys, not only through the draft, but free agent wise, and Smith being one of them. And then the other guy that I'm curious about, and I think Predators fans are too, is Evangelista.
That's what. That's the perfect player to end it right here. Is talk about him.
50 goals in the Ontario Hockey League last year, but let's remember he's a 20-year-old playing against a lot of 17-year-olds. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
2 years ago, he was in Chicago. He played 14 games for the Wolves on when Milwaukee and Chicago were combined because of the COVID situation. Had 4 assists in 14 games, and probably shouldn't have been on the ice, but it's just how the season was. It was a younger league. That wasn't true. That wasn't the true American Hockey League that year. But he goes back and what he does is he has this brilliant season in the Ontario Hockey League. He played for coaches who know exactly what it takes to be in the National Hockey League when he was in the OHL. I mean, they know what they're doing in London. So now here he comes back, and what's he going to do? We've had a lot of guys over the years that we thought were going to do something that didn't. They were given the leash to begin with, and then it just kind of petered out and nothing happened. So can he? I got to imagine that. I mean, listen, Carl Taylor doesn't have to do exactly what Nashville wants him to do with the lineup card every night. Okay, Carl, it's Carl's job to win games. He has to put players in the best position to succeed. And if Afanasiev is better than Evangelista on the power play, for example, then Igor is going to play the power play. I mean, that's just how it is. That being said, I would think at the beginning of the year, as we're feeling things out, Luke is going to be given an opportunity to play some of those minutes. And what are you going to do with them? And that's a lot of pressure there.
And I'm sure you can expand on this a little bit if you'd like, but it's a really difficult transition, right, from the OHL to the AHL.
Very much
defensively, it's a lot harder for an offensive player because the AHL is just a much better defensive league than some of these other leagues like the OHL. Correct?
Yeah, and it's 100%, and it's nothing to do with the quality of play or anything like that. It has I should take that back. It has everything to do with the quality of play because it's the pyramid, right? The NHL is the top of the pyramid. The American Hockey League is below that, and below that is everything else. And you're just getting better players. You're playing better against better goaltenders. You're playing against
you're going against some veterans,
better organization, and you're playing against guys who are 30 years old,
AHL veterans who are good in their own right,
exactly, or guys who are NHL guys who might be on the way down, or whatever the case might be. This league does not get, because it's a minor league, but this league does not get the credit that it's due for how good it is. 90% of the NHL, 90% of those players played in this league on their way up. So this is a stepping stone. And to steal David Poyle's "The Road to Nashville Goes Through Milwaukee," I mean, you see the roster for the most part, that has been true. So Evangelista is one I'm watching. When he came in last year, he came in for the playoffs. Nice kid. He did the work. He seemed to fit in well. He seemed to understand what was going on. I'm anxious to see him actually get a chance now, but I have not seen him play a game. And then Juuso Parssinen, he's going to be up there too. Like, he's just a nasty Finn. He's the stereotypical Finnish player. He's got
can't wait to watch him.
Grit in him. And so I know I'm going long, and I apologize.
No, you're fine. We love this.
But he's awesome another guy too. I'm so anxious to see. Last year, we didn't know what we were going to have down the middle. This year, I think Milwaukee can feel comfortable, Nashville as well, that there are a lot of centers in this organization. Last year, Tommy Novak, Cody Glass, and Rem Pitlick, they weren't here to start the season in game 2, game 3, game 4. We thought we'd have all of them, or at least 2 of them, and we didn't have any of them. Now there's a good group of centers. Parssinen was brilliant last year in the playoffs for Milwaukee. So there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, we discovered a lot of them
here. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about what they've built. And we're not, we're still not going to see Zachary LaRue here yet because he's not eligible to play in the American Hockey League. I mean, there are a lot of guys who people we are
further down
excited about to see, but we're not going to see them in Milwaukee yet. But we are going to start seeing the class of 20, the class of 19, and there's Spencer Stasny's another one. I mean, we could talk all day here. And
I hope everyone listening right now had a pen and they were writing all these names down because we just covered a bunch, and this is why everyone is so excited.
Yeah,
not just in Nashville, but even if you read some of these prospect rankings, some of these scouts who do scout all these organizations, these pipelines, they're starting to take notice of the Predators farm system as well. It's really, really exciting. And this is why we wanted someone awesome like Aaron Sims on today with us, because we just got a good wealth of knowledge and so many prospects we just covered. Aaron, this was a lot of fun. We would love to have you on again in the future, maybe midway through this season. One of our favorite listeners, I got to throw him a shout out, a friend of the show, CJ Wodashek, lives up in that area, is a huge diehard Admirals fan, big fan of yours. So I know he's going to definitely listen to the episode. So Aaron, I can't thank you enough for joining us today for episode 147.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Chad. It was my pleasure at any time.
All right, everybody, this has been episode 146 of Catfish on Ice. We will be back later this week to talk more about the Preds preseason. Take care, everybody.